Hi everyone, Phil from Tech for Techs here. This week I asked the boss exactly what we're going to be doing and she just told me to be quiet. So, well, that's what we're going to actually do, is have a look at a Be Quiet product. We've got the Pure Power 11 FM in. It's got a recommended retail price of roughly around about £80 and we've got links in the description below.
From high-speed networking to enterprise storage, at Ortual we have a solution for you. We're a UK-based vendor specialising in computer hardware components, so whether you're powering a data centre or upgrading a laptop, we can help. At Ortual, you'll get a dedicated account manager that gets to know you and your business, supporting you from our head office in Yorkshire. All our products are OEM compatible, tested in-house to ensure performance. And what's more, we offer a 5-year warranty across all our SSD range and lifetime on our memory. Want to find out more about our partner programme? Visit ortual.com.
Okay, as you can see, we've got the Be Quiet Pure Power 11 FM on the bench. We're going to do some testing with it in a few minutes. This is the 550 watt version, but they do have other versions available as well at different wattages. It's classed as an essential power supply. That means it's not their top-end power supply, it's more of your entry level or value. But saying that, for Be Quiet products, there's no real value product. They're all very good quality. So Essential is more their bottom end, but compared to some other manufacturers of power supplies, it's actually more like their top end. So it gives you a rough idea. So this is an 80 plus gold, which means it's really efficient. It's 93.9% efficient, which is very, very good. Again, that's under optimal loads and everything like that. And as you can see, it says exceptionally quiet, superior features. And if you're not too sure, the FM stands for, it means fully modular. And as you can see on the picture, there's no cables. That means fully modular. You basically plug in the cables you wish to use into the power supply, and then you're not left with loads of cables hanging around what you're not using. And then as you upgrade your machine, you can add more cables in. Okay, on the back of the box it says Pure Power 11 FM. You've got a QR code on there, quite a few different languages, bit of information about Be Quiet as well, and you've also got all your power levels and everything there, telling you the amperages of each types of cable and so forth as well. So that's pretty basic. It also tells you obviously it's an 80 plus gold, which we mentioned before, which is 93.9% efficient. On to the specifications, just to give you a rough idea, because one of the first things we get asked about power supplies is, can it support a i5 processor with a 3070 graphics card and so forth? You need to check that information yourself. Every computer is slightly different, has different power draws. There are websites on the internet which will add up the wattage you need, but I always recommend for any power supply you go for, you add 30% on top. So if your total PC uses up, let's just say 500 watts, don't use a 550 watt power supply. You need to add 30% on top of that, just to give it that extra ground, just in case your power usage spikes for whatever reason. Also, you will find that the power supply isn't as efficient when it's working flat out than if it's in roughly the 60 to 80% efficiency. So it gives you a rough idea. Regarding cables, it's got a 24-pin cable, so that's obviously the main one you plug into your motherboard. It's got two 4-pin CPU cables, obviously they can combine into an 8-pin. It's got two PCIe 6+2s, that's for your graphics cards, so you can plug in most graphics cards with that, so there shouldn't be an issue. You've got 9 SATA cables, that's what you usually use to power things like hard drives and SSDs. It's got 2 Molex connections, which is the ones you usually plug into really old hard drives, really old DVD drives, and potentially other devices, maybe in some cases things like let's say an RGB controller or some built-in fans in the case or something like that. They sometimes need a Molex connection, and it has also got an FDD, which basically means a floppy disk drive cable to power one of those. I don't know when the last time I saw someone use a floppy disk drive in a PC, but it's been a long time. But it does include the option there anyway. So also on top of that, as we said, it is 80 plus gold, so it's proper certified. As we said, it's roughly 93.9% when it's running on 230 volts. It's really quiet apparently. We'll double check that in a few minutes. So you've got high-end GPU support. I wouldn't necessarily go too high with a 550 watt, probably something in the lines of probably a 3050 or maybe a 1650. It might push a 1660 depending on your CPU, but if you want to go any higher than that, I suggest you look at the higher wattage versions of this power supply. Obviously cable management is a plus because you just plug in the cables you need. Each cable is basically 50 centimeters long, with the exception of the 24 pin, which is 55 centimeters. The 8-pin or 4/8 pin connection for your CPU is 60 centimeters long, and as I said, the other cables are 50 centimeters, but things like the SATA, there is obviously multiple on a string, and there's roughly a 15 centimeter between each of the connectors, so it could potentially go up to close to a meter long if you stretch it all the way out. But it gives you a rough idea depending on the cable you are using. So that's pretty much it. Okay, so this is what's inside the box. First of all, because a lot of people like to know about plastics and so forth, these are the plastic packaging, what comes in there. You've got some bubble wrap, what the power supply itself comes in, which is sort of needed-ish to keep it protected. There is a big plastic bag what all the cables come in, and then there's a mini plastic bag which your screws come in, so I understand they have to keep those so they don't keep rattling inside the box and so forth. So yeah, they probably could do better on the plastic, but it's not awfully bad in all honesty, so it's nothing major there. So next up, least important, probably the power cable for us, because they've sent us a European one, but again, this has been sent directly from the Be Quiet European headquarters. So if you are purchasing this in the UK, you should get the UK power cable, so we're not going to need that. Next up, we've got the manual, something what every single person reads. Well, everybody apart from everyone, but you've got a nice bit of information about it in there, but in all honesty, what do you really need to know about a power supply? If you're not sure how a power supply works, you shouldn't really be setting it up yourself anyway, so we don't need that. Right, okay, next up we've got the screws. So it comes with 4 black screws, so it colour codes with the actual power supply in most cases these days, which is good. And then you're down to the cables itself. So you've got that 24 pin, or should I say 20/24 pin. Not that I've seen anyone use a 20 pin cable for a long time, but it does have the ability there. You also have your 8-pin connector, or should I say it's 2 4s, which split in the middle, hard to do when it's all tied together, but basically it's 2 4-pin cables stuck together. You can separate them depending on your motherboard for your CPU. Then you've got your 2 PCI Express cables, so it's a 6+2 and it's 1 connection on each cable. Okay, so those will come, so if you only need 1, you can plug 1 in. If you need 2, you can plug 2 in. Simple as that. Next cable has got SATA and Molex connections, and even a floppy cable connection on it. I've probably found that a lot of people born in the last 20 years probably don't even know what a floppy drive is these days, but it has got a connection for it as well. And then you've got 2 more cables just with SATA connections on, so you've got plenty of SATA connections there, even some with a right angle connection as well if you do need it. Let's just say you've got that sort of tight connection, tight corner in your case, you've got the ability to connect up with that as well. Okay, before we look closely at the power supply itself, a quick thing about the cables. So first of all, the 24-pin cable, so that's your motherboard cable, is braided. Even though the cabling is all black, it is braided just to keep it nice and neat and stops all the cables going all over the place and having cable ties around it and so forth. So it is nice and neat. It does have a slight sheen to it as well. The other cables, for example, like this 8-pin CPU cable, is what they call a flat black cable, and it's flat. Well, it's It's called flat black because, well, the cable is flat, as you can see there, and it's black. The basics to it is it's easy for routing around your case, so it's not going to be like a big thick cable like this one here, so it's not going to be difficult for you doing cable tidying and routing and stuff like that, so it's going to make it look nice and neat, so that's pretty good. Also, each cable, with the exception of the 24 pin cable, does say on the end of the cable, for example, what it's for, so CPU or PCIe and so forth, just so you don't get mixed up, just in case you did. Now, if you want to plug these into the power supply, it's pretty straightforward. You look at the back of the power supply and it tells you exactly what goes where. So drives is, for example, the SATA and Molex connections. PCIe is, believe it or not, for the PCIe cables. You've got P8 motherboard, that means the 8-pin motherboard, which is also known as the CPU cable. That's where that plugs in. And then motherboard, which is your 24 pin. That one splits in two, so you'd have to plug that one, for example, in there and in that connection there, where, for example, the CPU one you just plug into there like that, and it clips in and it's nice and sturdy and in there pretty solid. To get it out, you do have a little clip on the bottom which you can just squeeze and pull, but it is quite tight, which is good. Now, a closer look at the box itself. So as you can see here, it's got a nice mesh grill rather than the usual cross effect. It's got a sort of a stripe effect on the actual mesh. And it's screwed in with 4 screws, and the actual fan seems to be like as if it's floating mid-air. It's got this sort of a white ring around it there. It doesn't light up or anything like that, or at least they're not saying it does if it does, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't. But it gives it a nice slight effect on there and looks slightly different rather than just being plain black. You do have Be Quiet's logo printed on this side here, which is also good. The opposite side, you do have the specifications, which are on the back of the box anyway. So obviously it says pure power 11 FM, and you've got all your voltages and wattage information there as well, just in case you forget what they are and you lose your box. On the back, you do have a honeycomb. You do have the honeycomb effect on the back for obviously letting the fresh air out, because what happens, air gets sucked in through this fan and then gets chucked out at the back. You have a rocker switch as well for on and off, and obviously that's where your power cable goes. The bottom of it is completely plain, so there's nothing really to see there. Otherwise, to look at, it's pretty straightforward. It's got a nice bit of weight behind it, which is always good in a power supply. If you ever buy a power supply which is really light, that's not because it's really well made, because it's light materials. That's usually because it's poor quality. If you're getting a good power supply, they're usually heavy because of the components inside generally are a lot heavier on higher class, higher quality items. Okay, as you can see, we've got the power supply inside this case. We didn't bother putting the motherboard in because obviously it's not needed, just to show you how the cables come through. So first of all, the cables coming through, as you can see, because they are all black, they blend in with the case just nicely. They're not like some power supplies you get what have multicoloured ends on. For example, like this Cooler Master one here, if you've got that in your case, it looked like a rainbow attaching to your motherboard. But in this case, it doesn't, because they're nice black cables and they're flat. And the advantage with them being flat, you can do your cable tied in very easy, because they just go flat against the back of the case rather than big and bulky, with the exception of the 24 pin one, which is usually quite common. You get like that anyway, but otherwise the rest of the cases, cables, what are in the case, you can lay flat and it won't be an issue. But the biggest issue I can see with this is not the cabling, it's actually the look of the power supply itself. If you've got it inside the case, the way up it should be, so the fan's at the bottom and then it exhausts at the back. If you've got a case what's got a window on the side, and let's just say you've got a shrouding over the power supply what's got a window in, or it doesn't even have any shrouding on the actual power supply, all you're going to see on the power supply are the specifications on the side, which, well, it's not the most attractive look in all honesty, which is a bit of a pain. Even if you've got a case where you mount your power supply at the top, it's still going to be in the same way, so all you're going to see is the specifications. The nice punched out bit, which looks really good for the moulding on the other side, if I just move the cables, is on the side what you're not going to see. And on top of that, it's upside down. So if you do have a glass panel on this side of the case, which is rare, but some cases do, your power supply look like it's upside down, which is a bit of a pain. And just to give you a rough idea, okay, it's the same power supply I said about the bad cabling a second ago. This is a Cooler Master one. If you've got this power supply in correctly, you can see the artwork on the side. So it just says the model number. It looks a lot better than all the random specifications on the top. And the way Cooler Master did it was put the specifications on the top bit here, which most people never see or can't see. So it's out of the way, especially if you've got a shroud in your case. So unless you put the power supply in upside down, then it's going to look a little bit of a mess, which is a bit of a shame. Okay, you might say it's a value power supply. £80 is not value. Okay, it's a good price for what you've got. As in, it might be a good value, but it's not cheap, it's not nasty. So for £80, I would expect it to look a little bit nicer than that when you've got it installed inside your case. And you might say you're not going to put a power supply of that value in a case which has got a glass window or a side window. Well, you can buy cases which are £15, £20 which have got a glass or a see-through window, and people are putting power supplies in worth 15, 20 quid as well. They may not be any good, but at least they managed to have the branding or a nice logo or something on this side of the power supply. Thank you for watching this video, everyone. It's really appreciated you made it all the way to the end. Please make sure you subscribe, like, comment, and even click that bell so you get notifications of new videos and live streams. It does help support the channel, and supporting the channel basically means that we can release more content for you and also better quality content going forward. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.